It's not a job. Being a leader is not a job. A job means it's 9 to 5. Being a leader is the way Chassidus looks at it, the way I'm being taught it, and the way I try and practice it. It's 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 always it's a mission. So you in a party, that's where you do it. You happen to be on a plane and you're flying somewhere. That's where you're doing it. Oh, it's not my job. I'm with my family now. It's my job. It's like it's after hours. There's no after hours for a leader. There's after hours somebody with a job. True. If you're in a position of influencing other people, a Jewish leadership position, right? Treat it like it's a mission.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the next episode of Shells and Shadows. Today, I have yet another dear friend with me, friend, mentor, but also rabbi. Rabbi Yisroel Wilhelm. He's our rabbi here on campus, and we're here today to have a very special conversation. So, Rabbi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me here. This is I've never been interviewed before by a student, and I consider you a good friend on a podcast. So it's really special to be here, ready to go.
It's a Shehechianu moment.
Shehechianu. Let's see where this takes us.
Amazing. So let's start. My first question for you, because I know your story, but others may not, is why did you decide, as someone who is a Chabad rabbi, someone who is deeply involved in your community, why did you decide to come to Boulder, Colorado, where there's hardly a religious Jewish community?
So it's an overloaded question in the sense that it starts from a very young child being raised in a Chabad family and with the teachings of the Rebbe. So, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here explaining everything, but that's my home and that's my foundation. My parents were not shluchim; they were not emissaries, and that wasn't the kind of home I grew up in. But there was always a sense in the home that I grew up in, my parents, of being not just living life for yourself, living life very much to others. My parents were Israeli, and I grew up in London, back in England. And at the time, there weren't as many Israelis as there are today. So every single time an Israeli family moved into our neighborhood, entire extended neighborhood, not just our block. I'm talking about into a few square miles. We would invite them, welcome them in, and so my home was an open home from the youngest of age. And I would say when I was a young teenager, I was sort of starting to realize and that I wanna be a shliach when I grow up. I wanna go out there. It got cemented over time. The more knowledge I had about what it is, and the more I went into yeshiva. And what really, I would say, it's hard to find a moment that sealed the deal. But obviously, when I got married to Leah, we were both together, very committed to let's go out there and let's do this. How I ended up in a college campus is another story. That's something I never knew I would do. We were ready to go anywhere, and not specifically to Boulder. We were ready to, we were looking at South Africa. I was looking, in former USSR, to various countries. But I had been by a couple Chabad on campuses, and I really felt that there was something there. There was something that I can give there that was special. My friends were very worried. My friends said, don't do this, because you're going to regret it. You're going to make a lot of friends, and they're going to leave you. Go build a community where you establish friends and people come over, and it's much easier. And as we'll talk about it, we'll have a conversation. We'll see. It wasn't easy. There were tough moments because of this idea of, students being very, very just on the move all the time. So, but that's how I ended up in Boulder.
I do think there's something very special about bringing Judaism to a college campus. I'll speak from my personal experience. When I came to Boulder, I never expected to be so involved in my Jewish community. And that's the experience of so many people, dozens and dozens of students who come in and come out of here within 4 years. They come in with a knowledge of Judaism that is maybe from Hebrew school, or just parents telling you this is what we do because we're Jewish, but not why. From my experience, it's understanding why we're Jewish and why we do what we do that helps students who may be searching for direction at this, pivotal moment of college. And I think your Chabad house has really helped them do that.
You know, two things came to mind when you said that. One thing is that for the first time ever, a few months ago, I was sitting with a group of seniors in the sukkah, and it just came to me. You were there, and I said, "How many of you thought you were going to be in a sukkah in your senior year when you were a freshman coming to college?" Almost nobody. And that I never thought of that. I never actually realized that most students who come and are involved are actually had no intention of ever. There are those obviously who are, and we know there's people who come, and you have some friends who they were committed from day one. That was always going to be. But I would say a majority had no intention of ever getting involved in Jewish life, and that's very incredible. That's on its own. Another thing that comes to mind when you were saying that, it sort of reminded me that the risk that the Rebbe took of sending, a rabbi and a rebbitzin to a college campus of all places. I don't remember what it was that you said, but it was something that I'm not sure, and I'm also not sure the exact story. I know the first Chabad house, in terms of the name Chabad house, was at UCLA, was at Chabad, was on a campus. But sending an emissary to an environment, a college environment, and to raise a Hasidic family, and to be able to be in a position to be an influencer and not just influenced by the surroundings, is there's a risk to that, obviously, and I don't have to explain to anybody listening why that is. I think it's obvious, and in a way I would dare to say, and it's only me speaking, and I've never heard this anywhere, but I would dare to say that one of the greatest accomplishments of Chabad is on college campuses, and specifically now that we've seen what's happened in the past couple of years, it's become a highlight. So there's Chabad everywhere in the world. You can, wherever there's Coke, there's Chabad. We know that, you can, everybody knows it, right? You go on vacation to Vietnam, to Thailand, wherever you are around the world, you'll find a Chabad house. So, but then there's Chabad on campus in North America, okay? And it's its own family, and it's its own unique, and I'll say it this way: I feel very blessed and honored to be part of that family, and sitting here with you is a great testament to that.
It is, and I do see the risk. I went to Crown Heights with you and your family and some of our other students last year and the year before, and that was the first time I understood, oh, this is what he's giving up to be here with us. It's the physical community, right? But I know to you, Judaism is your home, and it lives wherever you are. That's the thing. And so going out into a place where there are risks, like a college campus, having kids that you're raising in a Jewish way around a campus where who knows what goes on, it's a risk. But like we talked about this week in the discussion that we learned, it's something that's an obligation of a Jewish person. I feel that there's a division maybe between more Reformed Judaism and Orthodox Judaism. And Chabad says, we're going to go into every type of Judaism and just share our love and be an open house, like a mom and dad on campus. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter where you come from. You have a place here.
So you remind me that I always say, I don't want to know what my kids know.
Yeah.
They're being raised on the hill, and and for those who don't know what the hill is, it's the heart of college life. And yet I look at the greatest value I gave my children more than anything, because obviously you know who I am, and you know my family, and anybody looking at this video will realize that I'm a Hasidic Jew, and I'm raising my kids with Shabbos and Torah and mitzvahs, and the whole spiel. Okay, but what's the greatest value I gave my children living in Boulder? Something that they wouldn't be able to get in Crown Heights, something that they wouldn't be able to get in Jerusalem, is really the ability to open your heart to every Jew, like unconditionally, and being raised in an environment where it's interesting to me, right? Like I always wonder, sometimes wonder, through the lens of my little kids when they were young. Even now, some of my younger kids, walking into our Chabad house on a Friday night, and and seeing students, so it's Shabbos, right? So we have Shabbos. So we're trying to raise kids where, no phones on Shabbat, right? Shabbat's a very spiritual time, davening, all the big things. And then I'm watching through their lens. They know that's what their expectation is. That's what they know that we want from them and we do for ourselves. And then they come in our Chabad house, not outside our Chabad house, and they see the non-judgmental reality that exists where every Jew comes however on their own terms. And from a normal perspective, you might say, well, maybe our kids will be influenced. Maybe there's something, in other words.
Which seems logical and
right,
reasonable.
Right. Are we confusing them? Right.
Yeah.
Are we confusing them? And especially young kids. Young kids are very black and white. Are we confused? Yes, phone or no phone? Yes, dress one way or not dress another way. Do we wear a yarmulke? Do we not wear a yarmulke? Do we wash before we eat bread or do we not wash? Right. On the other hand, somehow, what do our kids learn? The greatest value is that just accept every Jew for who they are. They're part of our family. Ahavas Yisrael, loving every Jew. And that's a gift that, honestly, if I wouldn't live in Boulder, I don't know how my kids would learn that on such a core, essential way growing up. And it's and ultimately, what we learned this week, Judaism is about, are we able to be there for another person unconditionally, and not just in spiritual matters, also for a physical favor. Like when someone's not feeling well, a college kid, even though they're calling on Shabbat for the chicken soup, to still say, okay, they don't know. Now after Shabbat, I get the call, can I go and give them, chicken soup? How will that make them into a better person? I don't know if it will, but do I have my family, do I have an opportunity to teach my students to help somebody else? Yes, that's it. And that value, that core value, is really the greatest gift of raising a family on a college campus. Unconditional love.
So speaking of your family and light that is brought to the Chabad house, your son Yitzi is a very crucial part of your Chabad house and the experience that students have. But Yitzi has special needs. He has autism. And so that's another added layer of an element to your shlichut, to your service here. How have you navigated that? What has it taught you about yourself as a father, but also within the context of your work here?
Wow, I have a lot to say.
I'm fair.
and part of what I have to say is I've never had a chance to interview a student. I'm going to take the liberty soon to ask you what Yitzi means to you. After I say what I say, and then you're going to give me honest feedback here, So one of the risks, let me start from the beginning, because I think in order to appreciate, if we're having an honest conversation, the idea of transforming a difficult situation into something positive. One of the risks of going to a college campus, being a rabbi and putting your family out there, is that your best friends, your community, the people you're hanging out with all day are young kids, So when you have a personal challenge, unlike any rabbi or community leader in a community where you have people your age, people in similar situations that are dealing with, here you really do not have that support. That's just the reality. Maybe you've never heard that from me, but that's the reality. And so when Yitzi, was officially diagnosed with autism, it was very difficult, because who would we share that with? Who would I share that with? Who would Leah share that with? The students are, but not that I'm, not that they can't help, but they can't, and I don't even want them to. I don't want students to at that age to be there, the person who helps me. They're supposed to enjoy life. Our job is to help them. Our job is not for them to be, And it was very lonely, and it was dark. I'm going to use the word dark not lightly. One great story I always comes to mind. It's just such a great two stories. So you're reminding me two stories. One is that one time, Yitzi was 6 or 7 or 8 years old, something like that. And it was Shabbat afternoon. And you know how Shabbat afternoon in our house, it was much smaller then, so maybe 5, 6 students. And we're sitting around, and Yitzi wanted my attention. But I was talking to the students. So he walked up, took the nicest glass bowl into the table, picks it up and smashes it on the floor and throws it. And it smashes everywhere. So very calmly, I'm like, okay, Yitzi, we have to pick that up, and I used all the tricks and skills I was taught about reaction to such a child. And anyway, so we cleaned it up, went away, and then right after the students were like, wow, Rabbi, like, how are you so calm? How did you do that? And I'm like, because you're here. I'm putting on a show, guys. I did say that in my mind, but in my mind, I'm like, giving them a whole logical reason, this. I'm like, no, because you're here, so I have to put on a show. And then also remember one time, so Shabbat dinner was in our house, and Yitzi got a seizure in the middle of Shabbat dinner, okay? And the ambulance comes, and Leah goes to the hospital with Yitzi, okay, during Shabbat dinner. And it's packed, because it's my house, it's all small. And afterwards, Leah was like, and sorry, some of the students were sitting around and were like, where's Leah? And I'm like, you guys didn't notice? Like, an ambulance came, and I realized, not in a bad way, in the funniest way, and in the most humorous way possible, that college kids are stoned, not in the stone, physically, actually, could be they are, but they're having a good time,
especially in Boulder.
Yeah, okay, an ambulance came. They didn't. A couple students noticed, and everybody else life continued. So, being those stories are really what I'm trying to point out to, that it wasn't easy. There wasn't the support, and something you don't know about me is that me and Leah actually helped start an organization for Chabad rabbis around the world who have kids with special needs. And, when we started it, it was started with 5 families. I was, obviously us and 4 other families. Today, it's a very big organization.
Yaldei.
Oh, so you do know.
Yeah.
Yaldei, okay. And it's one of the greatest blessings that we've brought to people's lives. And anyway, so that's just a side note in terms of the support. But in terms of my personal journey, there was a night, and I remember where I was, and I sat there to myself. I remember I came out of teaching a class, and I said to myself, and I was actually teaching Tanya, and I said to myself, I'm faking it. I don't believe this. I believe it, but I'm not practicing it in any way. I'm not believing it in the sense that it's not influencing who I am, because essentially what I'm teaching is that you can overcome anything, right? I'm teaching that we have a soul that's pure and beautiful, including my son Yitzi, and including every single person, and including myself. And I'm living with a lot of resentment to insurance companies, to the public school system, to the private school system, to all sorts of people, anybody who might have looked at me wrong, and people made mistakes, But I'm living with all this, and most importantly, I'm somebody people come to ask what to do in this situation, and how am I behaving internally? Do I believe that you can be besimcha, you can have joy no matter what? Do I believe the foundation of Hasidic teachings? Am I living to that? And the answer was no. And so I said to myself, and I remember where it was, and I can't believe I'm sharing this in public as well, but it's a good lesson for people to hear. I said to myself, there's 2 choices. One choice is just quit. Just quit, and not with anger. I've tried my best, and I can't. I can't live this dual life. I can't preach one thing essentially, and I believe in what I preach, but then in reality, just inside of me, it was dark. Or maybe I start taking these teachings seriously, or maybe I start actually realizing that Tanya and Chassidus and that the Rebbe's teachings actually have an ability to change you. And it was not long before Yitzi's bar mitzvah. And so we're talking about what now? Just about 10 years ago. And that night changed everything. It really did. It changed everything in the sense that, not that I'm perfect. And not that I always live up to what I want to live up to. No, I'm not a tzaddik, if you know Tanya. I'm still a good struggling Jew. But at least I realize that those teachings are for me as well. They're not just for me to inspire others. I was busy inspiring others. Don't get me wrong. People, but I wasn't doing this to become a better rabbi. I wasn't doing this to now people will like me. No, that was great. That part was fine. I was doing this to be a better person, to be a better chassid, to be a better Jew, to be able to actually say, okay, I actually do this. Obviously, tremendous amount of blessings came with this. So one thing like that really shifted for me, when this moment came, it wasn't just for me. It shifted that what does Hashem want from me with a kid like Yitzi, and who is Yitzi really, right? Yitzi really is just like me. There's no difference. He's just a neshama, the soul. So the external part that he has autism, that's so technical. That's so not, we know, that's what we learn. That's what Hasidic teachings us, right? That it's just, okay, so one person's this, one person's that way. Technically we're all special needs, right? And the biggest thing, I think, and I'm curious to interview you for a moment, and when I'll go back to question you, I don't believe that you will find a more inclusive synagogue center than our Chabad house anywhere. People speak about inclusion. How do we include someone who's different, who has, that's a big question, and everybody asks that. Just come check out our shul Friday night. Who leads the way? Yitzi. Is it a little funny? I'm sure it is. I'm curious to hear from you. Friday night, like, is Yitzi? He's just part and parcel of our Chabad house. It's no concept of like needing to look for inclusion. That concept of I need to include someone means I am one person, that person's another person. When you're living through the lens that we all have a neshama, a soul, we're all included. So I'm asking you, what has that whole experience, now that you're a senior watching Yitzi's part of our Chabad house for 4 years, what has he taught you? What has he bought for you?
Well, we live in a world of balance. So where Hashem may place struggles in one area, he places beautiful blessings in another area. And so where Yitzi, I'm sure, has struggled in school and growing up in many ways, like the stories you described, he's given other sorts of gifts that people like you and I, who are, I guess, neurotypical to an extent, can't replicate. We just can't. Where I see this, for example, is in davening. When Yitzi's leading davening, he is an embodiment of the idea of serving Hashem b'simcha, with joy. Any chance he gets, he's screaming out the words of prayer, singing and dancing with whoever's around, and without effort. It's just kind of in his natural way of being, and everyone in that room lights up. We could be going through Torah reading or whatever it is, and everyone sees it. Now, on the level of Shabbat dinner, where maybe the inner crew isn't there, it's a big group of students. Yitzi's working the room. He's being a shaliach because he's a connector. He speaks with people. He goes around. He has his conversations, but he's not thinking, like you said, he's not thinking about, oh, well, I'm a Chabadnik and this is a secular student. How do I bring Judaism to them without pushing them? It's hey, are you coming to my house tomorrow for Shabbos lunch?
Exactly.
And until you answer yes, he's going to keep asking you every week.
And it's honestly, I think Yitzi's, you stole it from me, and thank you for saying that, because really Yitzi's the best shliach, and everything that we need to work through, you said it, we work through in order to get to a space. He just teaches it out naturally, but we have to give him the ability to do that. And not just him, you have to give all people like him the ability to do that. Because when you don't, you're missing out, essentially. You're missing, you're separating them. And I'm not saying that we do that we're doing that many times for their sake, like we're trying to save them, right? From being true, but what kind of opportunities are are other people missing out because I'll tell you two stories. One is there was a Jew here in town who really had a very hard time with a certain family situation, and he never comes to our Chabad house on Shabbat. He's a community member. He goes to another shul, doesn't come to our house, to our Chabad house. And one year, like a few years ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, on Hanukkah, it was Shabbat, and he shows up. Okay, so and I was a little surprised. He walked many miles. I was a little surprised that he showed up. Anyway, after services, I walked up to him and I said, "So great to see you. Shabbat. Why are you here?" So he said, "I've been having a hard time with something very personal." He said, "I learned somewhere that if you say Hallel, the prayer of Hallel with joy, then a lot of joy will come to your life." And I woke up this morning, I said to myself, who's one person in Boulder that I know will be saying Hallel with a lot of simcha, with a lot of joy? Yitzi Wilhelm. So let me go,
Yeah.
And to me, that's it. I mean, that's it. But one more, there was who this is because we've spoken about this. A student who was struggling with depression, and really, for whatever it's worth, he wanted to be at Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. He would want to be there, but because of whatever he was going through in that time of his life, he wasn't there. And I never wanted to push him to, because I'm not going to do that. And on Simchat Torah that year, I think it was your freshman year, Simchat Torah that year, Yitzi disappears. And he goes to find that student on his own. And who shows up? He shows up with him, and he dances all night. And that's something that...
And he hasn't stopped coming around since.
Exactly. And so that's really it. So we talk about taking a situation. Look, I'll be honest, okay? I don't want to be critical of myself when I was younger, as a younger parent, and I don't want anybody going through a struggle to tell, when they're going through a struggle right now, to say, I'm not feeling it. I don't see, I'm not feeling the light. That's life. Life is that it's when you're faced with a challenge, and when I was faced with a challenge, you're gonna go through whatever you're gonna go through, and no matter what you learn and what it's not gonna change. It takes a moment. It takes a story. It takes, for everybody, a different. Some people could be a rock bottom, and some people could just be like a moment that you have. But it takes something. So don't be hard on yourself if you are going through a struggle right now, and you're like, I'm listening to this. I have a kid with special needs, or I have a sickness in my life, or I have a challenge in my life, and I'm not feeling the light. I get it. The shell is real. The darkness is real. And it really is. And it's painful when it is. But if you can just hear this at this moment, and trust me when I say that there is something that will shift, and you'll suddenly be able to put in a new pair of glasses and see the world differently and find the light. It will be there. And I'm not saying that will come tomorrow morning. It takes work, it takes effort, it takes blessing, no question. A lot of blessing and a lot of gratitude I have to Hashem for giving me that blessing. But to continue to realize that there is a story that we're not aware of, right away. And the greatest story that we can talk about as a Chabad rabbi is October 7th, if you want to,
So I want to dive into that, but before, I just have a reflection, I guess. This is stuff that you're learning too as a human, not just as a rabbi.
100%.
And for someone who is on the outside, they may look at you as the rabbi, and he knows everything about Torah, and he practices Torah on a daily basis, and you do, but you're also a human who's learning and growing and who's figuring out how to be a parent. No one's ever taught you how to be a parent. You're doing it with Leah. I see this where I come from in a conservative Jewish community. My dad was the rabbi, and in our community, it was sometimes hard for people to see him as just Baruch Halevi. And ultimately, it is why he left and is now doing what he's doing. And growing up as the son of a rabbi, I see my father as my father and his imperfections. But as a community leader, spiritual leader of a community, it's important to remind yourself also that you're not a tzaddik. You're a struggling Jew.
Exactly.
And people can, and but you show people that. So you do. You really do. And people see that.
So I two things that came to mind. One is I believe be'emet, and you just said it. You just stole it from my mouth. I really feel with truth that when people see that in a person, people come to you. People feel ready to be more honest with you, and honestly, like, we all know this. We're human beings. The greatest gift we can have in life more than anything else is helping someone. I mean, that's when you walk away. And I'm very blessed to be in a position, most recently with, one of the students who passed away in Boulder. And people are like, wow, it's amazing what you do, Rabbi. And to me, it's like, that's not what it is. Like, thank you, okay. But I also get to have an opportunity to help someone, and that is and with sacrifice. I mean, to push myself to uncomfortable places, not to be someone but that ability to push myself beyond is because of the story that I have, is because of from my upbringing, because of my journey, because of the things that I've learned, and because of the life experience that I have as a human being, as just a Jew, just as a person, and absolutely, that's my first thing. So thank you. And the second thing, you speaking about your father, it always reminds me, one of my greatest blessings is that I'm a college rabbi, because a community rabbi is very different pressure. The expectations are all different. At the end of the day, being able to be just myself and authentic, especially with today's generation, that's what they want. Today's generation don't want the pulpit rabbi, the formal rabbi, and they don't judge you by that. They're actually they're beautiful that way. They like it when you're just another person. That's what and this more than anything else. And I didn't know this going to be a college rabbi, obviously, to be a Chabad rabbi on a campus, but it's worked out pretty well. It's worked out pretty well for me and for Leah, for our kids. They like just being authentic self, and it's beautiful I feel really blessed to have that in my life, to have my community as just young people who are not judgmental, who don't have a lot of life experience, who are just looking for a little bit of truth, and if you're authentic, they're open.
So I want to steer us back to what we're about to open, which is a big topic, but it centered around the idea you spoke about of sometimes blessings aren't always revealed to us and we can't always see, but if we trust that over time they'll be revealed, we'll be successful. October 7th marked a shift in Jewish history for all the Jewish people around the world, for you as a campus rabbi, and for our community specifically. In a time where all over our cell phones, we were seeing the most revealed darkness that we've ever witnessed in our life as Jewish people. We couldn't see beyond the veil, the shadow of darkness that was being placed right in front of us, in our hands, on our devices, and it was paralyzing. But slowly, we started to see bits and sparks of light where Hashem was peeking through that darkness and saying, there is not a loss of hope, because I'm still here and I'm going to show you how exactly I will make up for this darkness I've put in your lives, and revealed it to us in our community when there was an eruption, a complete eruption of Jewish life on our campus. It was a tipping of the scales back in the positive direction. And so how has that changed your work as a shaliach, and what's the biggest difference you've seen in campus life since October 7th?
I was going to introduce by saying that it's very important that we remember that we don't understand the ways of Hashem, and that we never have direct answers to darkness. tragedy happens and we're not God, and I don't want to play God. I don't know why anything happened, and I never know, But I do know, like you said, what our responsibility is and what it brings out in people. And that shift, at that time, I was a Chabad rabbi for 18 years. We're all Chai, right? Boulder. Um, and I can write, I think, a pretty incredible book about the first 18 years. I think I have my fair share of good stories, thousands of stories, tens of thousands of students. I think it'll be a good read. But there's a better book in the last year and a half. It's a different book, and it's just as big already as the first 18 years. It's been a shift for me in and I'm going to take a little responsibility for this one, in public responsibility. And I have publicly apologized to college kids for giving up hope on them. I think that I was coming to a point after 18 years where I was questioning publicly, not just privately. I was questioning to students. I was questioning to alumni. I was to my colleagues, to friends. I wasn't sure what I was doing here anymore, and not that I wasn't doing great things. Don't get me wrong. I think Chabad was, there was a great Chabad house for many years. You were involved. We had hundreds of kids. It was, we had 300 kids for Pesach. There was people coming every Friday night. We had 100 students. It wasn't about the numbers, but I was questioning, does anyone care? That was my question. That was my public question. I said, fine, they're coming, but do they care? Do they care? Do they care to marry Jewish? Do they care to even learn? Do they care? Why we were having big numbers, our classes were very small, right? Our opportunity to really educate and to get people to question, and is Judaism even relevant, right? For me, I looked at students and I'm like, I don't think they even know that Judaism has anything to offer. I mean, a great matzo ball soup, which is great. And I don't, but is anything deeper? Does Judaism have any wisdom to offer beyond that? I was really, really questioning the generation. And boy, did God prove me wrong. And I was proven wrong. And I've apologized publicly to the students. You know this. You've heard me say this. And I'll say it again over here. I think I got it totally wrong. I think I wasn't listening to Tanya. I wasn't listening to the fact that they all have a soul, they all have a neshama, just like I do. And yeah, sometimes in a revealed way, the klipa, right, this shell is, makes them, puts it to sleep a little bit, makes it not so revealed. But the darkness of October 7th, in a split second, when it mattered most, everybody speaks about the soldiers in IDF, but that's one thing. It's your homeland, it's your country, you're fighting for your country, right? And don't get me wrong, they're holy people, and I'm not, but the American college kid, whose parents don't even care if they come to Chabad or not. Their grandparents don't even care, right? They're just on their own. They're 1920. They what's important is Greek life or whatever their job, their degree. But Judaism, I mean, they weren't even educated that way. And suddenly they became way better than their parents and their grandparents in a heartbeat. They stood up for everything that's real, everything that's true. They changed their lives around. They realized that Judaism is not a joke. We got to learn more. And our classes are bigger than they've ever been. You see this. The interest is deeper. People are having deeper questions. And more important, even without understanding, they know that they need to do something about the fact that they're Jewish, and they have to stand up for it. And it's been the most humbling experience to watch. Everything, basically, I sort of, again, it was like a little bit with the Yitzi thing. I knew it from the books, but I didn't know it in life. I knew in the books it says that every Jew has a neshama, a soul, and every Jew cares. And, we learned this stuff all the time. But did I actually believe it in real? I was starting to lose my hope in a certain way. I'm more pumped about the Jewish future than I've ever been, and I'm just a little guy in a college campus in Boulder. And I think we have a lot of amazing things happening here.
Well, the books are only books until we decide to apply them to life. And sometimes they show up in the same patterns, in the same ways of the stories that we read. And one day it clicks and it's like, that's exactly what they've been talking about in these pages and pages of Hebrew and Yiddish and whatnot for thousands and thousands of years. This is it right here.
Correct.
In Tanya in particular, again, not to say that we know how Hashem works in the world, but it says to thank Hashem for your misfortunes just as you would for your fortunes and your blessings. And we say, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would we thank Hashem for something that's inherently bad? But the point is that we don't understand that misfortunes can lead to great, great goodness, things that we can't see, things that aren't revealed to us.
Mainly to push us to places that we never imagined possible. And we should never have the kind of misfortune of October 7th or any misfortune that we need. But we are, just like in this story, the Jewish students at CU and around the country for that matter, but I'm just talking about the CU, have stood up when anti-Semitism came straight to their faces over here in a horrible way. And they were like, now we'll show you who we are. The same way we can all do this in much smaller moments when we're pushed. We have a choice to make. Are we going to be happy? Are we going to be joy? Are we going to realize there's a great kindness happening to us? Or are we just going to be stubborn and stick with our ego and say, oh, my life sucks, and be stuck with it? And obviously, I'm not talking about great tragedies, and I'm not judging anybody here, and including not judging myself, as I said earlier. But we can be pushed, and I really think that even the words Am Yisrael Chai, right? I mean, it was a great story. But what did it actually mean? Now we know. We know we're not going anywhere. We know that the last year and a half has shown us that, for some students, and I think people don't realize this, some students have really experienced anti-Semitism harshly in the past year and a few months. And not just students like you who are, put your face out there, random students we don't even know. And we have to talk to them, and we hear what's going on in the dorms or in the fraternities or in sororities or just roommates or friends. It's not been easy, but look what's going on. Our numbers have doubled. And it's not because of anything special we've done. It's because of what they've done, that they've decided that it's time to show up. And it's time to show that, being Jewish is not just a thing. It can actually influence me in a real way. And it's a beautiful thing. It's such a zchut, such a merit for me and for Leah to be part of this, to just be part of this incredible renaissance. Out of all places on a college campus, this is where the whole American jury is worried about one thing today: what's going on in our campuses. And they have what to worry about. And yet, what is going on our campuses? The most amazing story, right, of modern time. Obviously outside of Israel, right? I mean, the most like that we're being pushed in one way, and we're showing up to show that God matters, our religion matters, our people matter, and the world matters, and we're going to take care of everybody.
So a story that I have to share with you. You've shared some stories with me, but a story that something that happened to me right after October 7th. I don't think I've shared this with you.
Find out.
I was at a party somewhere that you probably wouldn't be, and a student comes up to me. I just started wearing my yarmulke for the first time publicly, and he sees my yarmulke. He comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, are you Jewish?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm Jewish. Are you?" "Yeah." He starts getting all emotional, and he says to me, "Hey, I see what's going on campus. I see what's going on in the world right now, and I'm scared. I've never felt Jewish. My parents hardly raised me Jewish. I don't have any Jewish friends, but I feel like I need to do something. I feel like I need to be somewhere acting, right? Being with my community, but I don't know where to start." And so I did my thing. I gave him my phone number. I added into a group chat and whatnot. And now he comes and helps make challah. many, many weeks out of the school year. And I met this kid at a party, right? The idea of being a shaliach is something that you've also taught your students, because we're the ones who are going to the fraternity parties and going to these house parties where you probably aren't. But you've taught us, be a symbol of Judaism wherever you go. And it draws other people in these environments that, probably aren't the most light. I hold that story very closely to me.
First of all, it's a beautiful story, and I don't remember it. And maybe you did share, but I don't remember. I also had a similar story, much smaller. I was at a World Series game with Yitzi, as you know, and the guy standing right next to us at the end gave me a big hug and said, "I just want to tell you how much it means to me that you're wearing a yarmulke in public." Over here at a Yankee game at a World Series, national TV, He says, "I'm just being so scared to be Jewish in New York, And he goes, "I'm a Jew. Thank you." Like, it was like so meaningful. I really feel like, look, this Shabbat is 75 years since the Rebbe took over the leadership of Chabad, and Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, of blessed memory, said a very brilliant line about the Rebbe, which is, what made the Rebbe into a great leader was that he was not looking for followers; he was looking for leaders, right? And I do believe that in our Chabad house, the number one thing that we teach students is be a leader. It's just if you're out there, you have an opportunity to share Judaism or just to help someone, just be a leader. That's the number one thing. And honestly, it's watching you, if I can say this in a moment of honesty, watching you that's not just you, I'm putting you on the spot because you're here, is the greatest gift I can give to the person who taught me to be, which is the Rebbe. I can pass that gift, is that I can teach a Jew to be a leader and to not just wait around and be a follower and, "Rabbi, what do I do next?" No, and I watch you actually lead different things on campus on your own initiative and teach a class or whatever it may be, or just help someone and be there. And that story that you shared before, knowing that when you're going somewhere, you actually have a job to do and to change the world, that is unpeeling the shell pretty quickly, my friend. That's how, if we get more people to do that, the whole world will change in a blink. Mashiach's not this dream reality. We just need people to realize that they have their leaders, that they can, continue to help people in every situation they are a little bit. And tomorrow morning, the world becomes a better place.
So we've talked big picture about maybe what's going on in the grand scheme of things in our world with Israel after October 7th, how it's playing out on our campuses. But let's talk smaller scale, because that's where we really have our power and our control as individuals. How would you address a young Jewish leader who is looking to peel back some of that klipa, some of those shells, who is looking for practical ways of spreading light and spreading Judaism in this world? Tanya talks about how there's darkness in this world, and there's things that are also, holy on the opposite end. But in the middle, there's kind of the world we're in, where there's things that have the potential to be elevated to holiness, and there's the things that, if we don't have the right intentions in mind, can fall into darkness. So how would you inspire and empower someone as an individual?
Two things. Number one is, don't get fazed by the darkness. Whatever that may be. That can be somebody, you're trying to reach out to someone, you're a leader, you're making a phone call, you're trying to, it could be from raising money to inviting them to Shabbat dinner. I don't know, it could be anything, right? And they say no. Don't take it seriously. Don't let it shift your mission. Don't let it shift who you are. And not just because I'm giving you a tip, this is a good piece of advice, but because really you have no idea what's going on in the other person, you have no idea how much you're influencing them actually by reaching out. Stop worrying about your own ego, about how it feels for you. Rather, just do what has to be done. And the better you can get at that, and it's hard. It's not easy because we are human beings. The more you can get into that Hasidic mindset, less ego, I'm sorry, yeah, less ego, more about God, more about the mission, more about Hashem, you'll be fine. So, and if you want, I have 1,000 stories of people who I thought were upset at me, thought were angry at me, thought, were ignoring me. And then not only did I find out that there was a story behind why they were doing it, I actually found out that those text messages and those ignored phone calls is what shifted their life in incredible ways. So sometimes we get to find that out, sometimes we don't. But stop worrying. If I spent too much of my time, don't make the same mistake I made, right? Spending too much of my time, how is it changing someone, right? Just do it. I think that's a very, very important thing. Second of all, it's not a job. Being a leader is not a job. A job means it's 9 to 5. Being a leader is the way Chassidus looks at it, the way I'm being taught it, and the way I try and practice it. It's a mission. So you in a party, that's where you do it. You happen to be on a plane and you're flying somewhere, that's where you're doing it. Oh, it's not my job. I'm with my family now. It's my job. It's like it's after hours. There's no after hours for a leader. There's after hours somebody with a job. True. If you're in a position of influencing other people, a Jewish leadership position, right? Treat it like it's a mission. And a mission, of course, you have to be a mensch. I have to have a wife, I have kids. But those are 2 pieces of advice I would say that can really shift Jewish leadership into really influencing and helping others.
That shifts my perspective just hearing it. A leader is not a job. It's not something that you do on a clock. And it's timed. If you get a text, I'm sure you get texts off the clock. I know you do.
Yeah.
You get a lot of messages, and it's just opportunities to help people.
I had my personal rabbis. I have my own mentor rabbi, told me years ago, and I called him about something, and it's something that's always stuck in my head. He's saying being a shaliach, being this leader, is not a 9 to 5 job. It's being in Boulder for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and just knowing that you're available to the other Jewish community. There will be some days where they don't need you, and there'll be other days where you're needed for 28 out of 24 hours. And that's how it's going to be. So if we can look at life that way, our Jewish leadership, you'll have a lot of goodness coming in your life. L'chaim to that.
L'chaim to that. The last thing I really want to touch on with you, and it's something that we have brought into our Chabad house this past Shabbos, as Agam Berger was released, is the statement that she made, the first thing she said to the Jewish people and to the world when she was released. And she said, "B'derech emunah b'charti, v'b'derech emunah shavti." By the path of faith I chose, and through the path of faith I was returned. And for someone who endured absolute hell for hundreds of days, 15 months in the arms of her oppressors and enemies that wanted her dead, she chose a path of faith. She kept Shabbat. She fasted on Yom Kippur. She took care of others when she had the opportunity. And she embodied leadership around the clock and served Hashem, essentially, when she didn't have to. It wasn't her obligation as someone who's under such circumstances. So how do we honor Agam by choosing a path of faith? And that's not just belief in Hashem. It's bitachon. It's full trust that as long as I'm doing what I need to do, I will be provided for.
It's hard not to get emotional when you speak about Agam, right? You've sat here for an hour now, and we've been talking about my problems in life or whatever challenges and trying to help others. And I've seen a lot of people. Agam, I mean, to be in, honestly, like, I would rather be dead than be there. I mean, who wouldn't, to be in that hellhole, surrounded by the worst people on earth, and to walk out of there and to say that the same faith I came here with, I'm coming back with. Wait, do we have problems in life? I'm trying to remember. I think it's a sometimes in life, sometimes in history, you see something, and when you're seeing it, this will be spoken about forever. And I really think that Agam is going to be a Jewish woman that until Mashiach comes and beyond, we're going to look up to a pillar of how we, as you said, when we're going through our struggles, let's meditate on that, right? When we're in the dark place, and hopefully never 1% of what she is, we should just say, B'derech emunah b'charti, u'b'derech emunah shafti. Just say it to ourselves a few times. I chose this. I chose faith. I chose that the world's a good place. I chose to believe that people are good. I chose to believe that I love who I am. I chose to believe that Hashem is in control. And I'm not shifting any of my attitudes. I'm going to come back, and I still believe the world's a great place. And I still believe that people are great. And I still believe that. Have I ever heard anything in my life that's as incredible? Like I had to go personally through such a journey to even reach a small percentage of that faith. And here you have a young girl she just got it. It's what kept her going. And I'm sure, every day we're hearing a little bit more about this, about her personal journey. And so, yeah, I do think it's something very real for every person who's ever going through a struggle to stop and say this meditation to themselves. I have chosen, I know what I believe. I know I believe in the goodness of the world. I believe that Hashem will take care of me. And I'm not going to let that shift just because of whatever's going on right now. And when I return, meaning I return from that dark space, I'll come back with it. And it won't take me long. She got on the helicopter, and 5 minutes later, she already knew what she was going to write to the world. And if we could take a little bit of that attitude while we're going through our going through life, it would definitely inspire us. We could definitely be happier, and remember that we can get through it. Because at the end of the day, b'derech emunah shafti. I'm coming back, and we're always going to come back. And as long as we're alive, we're going to be coming back, and knowing that the world's a great place and there's a lot to accomplish in this world.
And in holding that message close to us, that allows us to serve Hashem, serve our community, serve our world, not only in a mundane way, but with joy, with simcha, because we understand, b'derech emunah b'charti, I've chosen this path. I think we have to hold that close to us in order to cultivate joy and to know that Hashem yitvarach tamid ohev oti v'tamid yeh li rak tov. Hashem yitvarach tamid ohev oti v'tamid yeh li rak tov. Ve'yeh li od yoter tov.
Shkoyach, od yoter tov.
Od yoter tov. Better and better and better each day.
Thank you for inviting me, Yuda. It's been amazing. L'chaim. And hatzlacha with your amazing journey podcasting. And I'm sure you're going to meet a lot of amazing people. I look forward to becoming a big fan of yours in many, many years from now. And always say, I was there in the beginning. L'chaim.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Toda rabah.